welcome to the DGD podcast. As always, Robert Reynolds going solo today. Juan and Kobe have some prior engagements, so it'll just be myself, right? As we talk all things recruiting. Obviously, Wednesday being early signing day, so that is extremely fun times for Georgia fans and really fans across the entirety of college football. First off, show is brought to you by our friends over at BetUS. Hey, check them out. Go to dgdpodcast.com. Go down, check out the BetUS logo, sign up, create an account, and when you go and set your first deposit, use code DGD125 when you check out and when you do your deposit, and you will get 125% sign up bonus on all sports. Best in the business in regards to sign up bonus. So keep that in mind. Listen, start making some money. You got bowl season, folks. Bowl season is right now, which honestly, that leads me to something that I think everybody, and I mean everybody in the Georgia fan base, is licking their chops, folks. Um, I don't know if you watched it, but Florida got absolutely embarrassed by Oregon State. Absolutely embarrassed. Um, and honestly, it was so fun to watch that it just made me want to bark. It really did. It's just I hate Florida. I really hate Florida. So much so that I want to kind of talk about the field goal with 40 seconds left to preserve this streak, I guess FBS streak of a couple hundred games or something like that without getting shut out. Um, I don't think people understand just how bad that looks if you're down in Gainesville. um, yeah, I think you look at bowl games. This bowl game was a preview of next year a little bit, right? A sneak peek, if you will. And if y'all don't get shit fixed, prawn the end of the season because y'all are absolutely pathetic. JOGG checking in. Uh, Bishop Don saying Adonis is on suicide watch. I've already reached out and did a wellness check. Actually, after the game, haven't heard nothing out of him since. So I'm really starting to get worried. Really starting to get worried there. Um, but meanwhile, right, enough of this Florida Gators crap, right? Enough of this Gator garbage, if you will. Let's talk recruiting, right? Obviously, Wednesday, like I said, Wednesday is the signing day or early signing day, start of the early signing day. And you've actually already got several kids in the 23 class already on campus. Jamal Jarrett being one of them. Tyler Williams, after winning the state title, is another. You just got, I want to say, a handful of kids already on campus. So, in regards to that, for bowl practices, obviously we know how important those are, especially for early enrollees. But if we look at Georgia right now this is off of 24/7. 24/7, Georgia's ranked second in the country. But I think there's a question. I think a lot of people might want to know: can Georgia climb to the number one spot? And to me, my answer is no, and that's okay. I think Bama has set themselves so far apart with what they're expected to land that Georgia is probably going to be fighting for second, and I think Georgia will finish second in this class. But do not let that deter you from the fact that Georgia has an absolutely stupid class. And honestly, it's going to get better if potential names fall into this class. To give you a kind of a rundown of what we've got now, what Georgia has right now, you're looking at A.J. Harris, right, cornerback from Phoenix City, Alabama. Samuel Mpemba, the recent Georgia commit, right, out of IMG. Jonah Aguero, right, that's a safety. Raylan Wilson, right, you got your linebacking core. Raylan Wilson, Troy Bowles, C.J. Allen, C.J. Allen, excuse me. And listen, Georgia, we know, right, it's linebackers. It's a linebacker-heavy class for us. And then obviously you've got receivers, right? So you've got Yazid Haynes, You've got Raymond Cottrell, Tyler Williams, obviously. So from top to bottom in most all spots, except for quarterback, Georgia's in a good spot with a lot of folks. I know a lot of people have been wondering about Justice Haynes, right? Recently, Justice Haynes basically just shut everything down, saying, "Listen, I'm going to Bama." It's just that simple, basically paraphrasing. But he's sticking with Bama. And one of the, I guess, another thing that Georgia has to look at as well is Bama could be getting some potential guys that obviously Georgia was on, or Georgia was after, if you will. Quay Russell, James Smith, if you're into crystal balls or crystal ball there. Uh, but Georgia can finish this class out strong. So I'm going to go back through and list the full 23 commits that Georgia has right now. So you have A.J. Harris, Samuel Mpemba, Jonell Aguero, Raylan Wilson, Monroe Freeling, Troy Bowles, C.J. Allen, Tyler Williams, Gabe Harris, Pierce Spurlin, Bo Hughley, Lawson Lucky, Raymond Cottrell, Big Jaw, Jamal Jarrett, Chris Peel, Roderick Robinson, Kelton Smith, Anthony Evans, Justin Rhett, Yazid Haynes, Jamal Merriweather, Joshua Miller, and Peyton Woodring. Those are your 23 current commits. But I think Georgia could finish up cleaning house on some interested names and some actually, for this matter, huge players left in this cycle. I think the first one that I'm most interested to see is Damon Wilson. Uh, Scheduled to announce Wednesday. I want to say Wednesday afternoon somewhere. Uh, Pretty much it's a Georgia Ohio State battle, and for me, I feel comfortable saying that he's going to end up in this class. Um, but I'm not saying that it's over yet. Just filling it out. I just think that he will be in this class, and that's another edge rusher that Georgia is just absolutely looking for bodies at that in that position, right on rushing the outside. Like I said, you've already got Gabe Harris. You know, I don't know if a lot of people thought may have forgotten about him for some reason, but Gabe Harris, I know the Valdosta product. Uh, there was kind of an interesting backstory with him. Not being able to play at Valdosta, so he transfers to IMG and plays his senior year. Absolutely balls out too. So, in that case right there, I think that's another one that's on the edge. Obviously, Sam Mpemba, a physical freak. Um, I can't wait to see Samuel Mpemba in red and black. I'm super ecstatic about that. But if you add a guy like Damon Wilson to that, I definitely think, we need bodies, but we need experience there too. That will help, drastically getting Damon Wilson. Then you sit there, you look at another guy, 2023. You look at Jordan Hall. Jordan Hall, 300-pounder D line out of Florida, scheduled to announce the 22nd, so that Thursday. I'm just excited to see both of these guys. I think Jordan Hall's another guy that I think Georgia's in a really really good spot here with landing Jordan Hall as well. Listen, we've seen Florida on the recruiting show, and I don't think that Florida has a chance here. I think there's some smoke about that. Um, I think this is all Georgia here. Just think so. It seems like we got Christmas week. Wanta Claus is obviously very busy. Yeah, honestly, Pat, I think that's the case. I think that's what he is, what he's doing. He's checking his list and making it twice right now. So we don't want to interrupt him ahead of Christmas Eve. Just going to let y'all know that. If you listen, I'm going to pose this question to the brigade. Let me know what kind of questions you have in regard into this recruiting cycle. If you have any questions, obviously we're only on YouTube moving forward if you watch this show. But if you have any questions, drop them in the comments, and we're going to read them out. We're going to answer these questions, kind of an AMA style, a little bit of a different format, if you will. But I think there's a lot of intrigue, right, leading up to this. There's some names that might not sign. They're not going to sign, I should say, not going to sign early signing day. They'll wait till February. And I think this is where things get interesting for me as well, because we're going to add another name that Georgia could close out this 23 cycle with, and that's Deuce Robinson, um, tight end, 5-star tight end. And already you look at Lawson Lucky and Pierce Spurlin. Pierce Spurlin's been in this cycle or been in this class since 2020. And then Lawson Lucky, there's been some smoke about Alabama, but I think he ends up at Georgia. Just my thoughts there. But if Todd Hartley can go out and get Deuce Robinson or Walker Lyons, another name, tight end, was a recent Stanford commit. If Todd Hartley gets 3 tight ends in this cycle, on top of what we already have at 2024 in Landon Thomas, I don't know if there's a better tight end coach in the country, and especially from a recruiting standpoint. Georgia has a ton to offer, right? They obviously, you see that. I think, when you look at Darnell more likely going to be going to the draft, you look at, Rylan Godey, Brett Seither, guys might be leaving. There's a lot of potential there. And you'll have Brock Bowers, you'll have Oscar Delt, but, the position might still be a little thin. So you look at the guys like Lawson and Pierce Spurlin that are currently committed to be able to fall in the rotation. Well, if you add Deuce Robinson, the dude's a physical freak as well. So if you were to add either one of Walker or Deuce, it's just insane to think that you would have 3 elite tight ends. But that's just a sign of what Georgia's been able to do. Georgia has recruited the tight end position. We've utilized the tight end position to the best of anyone in the country. I don't care what anyone else says. It wouldn't surprise me if we land. I honestly think there is a good chance that you might see Deuce Robinson end up in this class. And if that's the case, I'll go bonkers on air. I don't care. Bishop Don says, I hate late signers. They are the divas we don't want. If you know, you know. To that point, though, I get where you're going. However, at the same time, you don't have to come to campus, if you will. You can sign to get your spot, right? Commit, if you will. I'd like to hear your logic on that, Bishop Don, as to that. But for me, I think, you want to commit. You add a little bit of intrigue, right? If you sign on February. Now, at the same time, like you have to do, I think school and things like that also can play into that. But, you can sign, but you don't have to go, I guess is where you're going with it. So to your point, I see it. I see your point. But, I get it. I get it. Pat says, I wear a size extra large natty trophy, Wanta Claus. So apparently we're doing apparently Wanta can still be seeing this. Whatever Bishop Don says, I co-sign. Okay, there you go. So, excuse me. As you can see, the brigade is coming in hot and heavy already. Now, I think there's something that I want to ask the brigade, but I'm going to explain and give you a chance to, I'm going to pose this question, let the brigade answer, and while you do that, I'm going to give you my answer. As yes, we're doing Christmas wishes, Roots, apparently. Trust me, they want the spotlight on them and want to make it a big deal. Trust me. Hey, you might be right. I mean, you might be right. But it's crazy to me to think that, obviously with early signing day, Bishop, if Juan was here, Juan would tell you about the times when you only had to sign in February. So, with that being said, we do have to keep that in mind, right? Now that you can sign early, I get your point. But apparently Bishop is leading the charge that we hate divas. Listen, if you give me Deuce Robinson, you can call him a diva. I don't give a damn, but I'll be ecstatic to have him. Shit, give me that all day. But the question I want to pose to the brigade, and if you're listening, think about this, right? But I want to see where you think about this, and I want to see who you think will be the sleeper in this cycle. And I think to me my answer might not surprise you, but I think it can. I think it'll be Jamal. I think it'll be Big John. And the reason why I say that is because of his impact. I think he'll have a tremendous impact. You won't see the statistics. I don't see the statistics popping off like that, like you would expect for a high, for edge rusher or for whatever. But his ability, right, at 350 pounds and obviously a legit 6'6", you have the potential right there to fill the role that Jordan Davis left. And now that you have that kind of body, and he's like I said, he's on campus, he's more than likely be going through bowl practices and things like that. So this is extremely beneficial for him to be this early on campus. Um, get his body into shape and get him going. And when you have someone that can eat space the way he does, and add that with the guys that we have in the rotation now, when you have a Michael Williams, you have you'll have Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, you'll have Kristen Miller, you'll have these guys, Bear Alexander. When you add that into the fold, it screams dangerous potential for the entirety of the defense, because I can only imagine, hypothetically, he gets in and starts playing, and then you sit there and you see him do what he's expected to do efficiently, and then you have a guy like Raylan Wilson coming in, or you have a Spawn London, or whoever, right, a linebacker to plug in and just go, right? Eerie vibes, right? Eerily similar, and I love it, to Nakobe and Jordan Davis. Now, I'm not going to compare that exactly, but you kind of get the concept of where I'm going with it. So the potential, obviously, the sleeper portion of this comes from not looking at stats. I have to, people want to look too much into stats, and I understand that, but when it comes to sleeper, it's just the people that don't really stick out in that way, but the impact is felt. And that was the epitome of Jordan Davis, right? He was extremely impactful, but the stats weren't there. However, you don't expect the niche that he played to produce the stats that you would think. And a lot of people don't want to understand that, but that's just the way that is. So I think my sleeper pick is, Jamal Jarrett. But honorary mention, if I had to choose an honorary mention, I think it would be interesting to see. But if we're looking at sleeper picks, give me Monroe Freeling. Now, he's a high-profile kid, right? He's number 57 overall. But if I'm talking about a sleeper right now, he is a massive, massive human being. Massive human being. 10.5-inch hands, right? 305 pounds, 6'7", right? And he seems extremely athletic watching tape and things like that. The key is when you rotate in, can he crack the question that I have for this, and this honorary mention, is, can he crack the tackle rotation? I expect him to be a tackle, and I think we need tackles. I think we've got a guard log jam, if you will. So I think you have to have these bodies that can legitimately play tackle, and I think Monroe is one of these guys. I think he's one of the better hits in the last two cycles along your offensive line. Ernest Green being Ernest Green's going to be a dog. Just going to leave that there. But I think Monroe Freeling could be a sleeper if he was able to get in and crack the rotation. I think it'll be fun to watch and see how he progresses, and see if he can get into the rotation to some degree. Going back to the comments here, without a true nose tackle to soak up to, talking about bodies here, our mint front is impossible, and go back to a standard 4-down front. Yeah, when obviously kind of you do this mint front, and you don't want to see a legitimate 4-3 or anything like that, or like a legit 4-2-5. Kirby likes the ability to use 3 with some edge rushers and things like that, and you don't want to sit there and have to rely on 2 true defensive defensive linemen with the with ends and everything like that. So yeah, I see your point there, Roots. I definitely think having a true big-bodied nose like that is going to be crucial, because you look at a guy, if you can hold it down, like Zion Lowe was expected to do this. Bear Alexander stepped in this year and did a I thought a good job holding down the middle of the defense in the obviously it's a zero tech or a one tech or whatever, and that allowed Jalen Carter to kind of wreak havoc. But when you have a guy like Jamal being 340, 350 pounds, just eating up bodies and demanding double teams, because listen, I've seen him play and I've seen entire offensive lines come after him and block him. 4 offensive linemen one time. He demands it, folks. He demands multiple bodies, and if you put him one on one, he's going to bully people. And obviously, the transition from high school to college, there is a transition. I'm sure Juan and Kobe can explain to this whenever they come back on. But when you have the early enrollee aspect of things, right? You're getting him bowl practices, so he's going up against, our offensive line. He's going up against Cedric Van Pran potentially. He's going up against, things like that. That is so important because not only are you going up against an elite offensive line, I don't care what anyone says, they should have won the Joe Moore Award, and I can't wait for them to prove a point against Ohio State. But neither here nor there. I think it'll be very interesting to see how he transforms from right now to the spring and then into the fall, the summer camps and everything like that before the actual season starts in 2023. It will be extremely crucial to see how he progresses, right? Strength, speed, 12.2 and 100 as a senior, 350-pound guy is just ridiculous. So I expect him to get faster and stronger and leaner, but still stay at a good weight, like 340. And just now, I don't think he's going to be as athletic as Jordan Davis. I'm not going to say that, but if you're able to eat the bodies and still be athletic enough to make plays and stuff, that's all you can ask for his role and for the niche that he's being asked to do. Okay, so make Bishop Don Juan laugh again. Okay, so you signed with Bedrock U. Fair enough. Talk about double teams, turns it into 11 versus 10. Yeah, you look at, and we talked about this on the defenses and stop the run, if you will. When you have a true nose tackle that demands a double team, now you can sit there and take that linebacker and plug it in, similar to what we had last time. When you have the ability to sit there and plug that linebacker, and obviously Jamal could be that one of these guys that plug those double teams, I'm all for being able to sit there and utilize less bodies up front and to help the back end of things. And if you're able to do that, we saw, it's going to be hard to run in the middle, which leads to edge rushers doing their thing on the outside. Then you sit there, it could just be a repeat process. So I'm extremely excited to see what Big Ja can do. I really am. But I think when you take in the 23 class itself, give me the edge rushers as well, because we look at previous edge rushers, right? Trayvon's and Nolan Smith and things like that, and we're gonna be hurting next year. If barring a situation where we can pull an elite guy out of the portal, I expect us to go for the portal on this. I really do. For an edge rusher, if the right one comes out, I guarantee you Georgia will be hard pressed and just go balls to the wall to get one. When you pair that inside, the interior, along with the elite edge rushers, that is what to me makes Georgia's defense so scary. It just does. And I think you look at guys like already on. I'll just say this already in the fold, but when you have a guy like Samuel Mpemba, which is just, if you've not watched his tape, you're doing yourself a disservice, because that kid is a freak. It's a freak. He is an absolute freak. And if Damon Wilson, if he enters the class, now you've got that pair of edge rushers, along with Gabe Harris. Already in the fold, you've already got Darius Smith. I think Darius Smith, in my opinion, will have a breakout year next year as a sophomore. I feel that. Now, obviously, we're not accounting for injuries potentially. I don't want to wish that. I don't want to think about that. But if all things go well, I would expect to see Darius Smith have a breakout season as a sophomore. especially on the edge. You're going to have to. You're going to have to find those bodies. Pat says when Big Bear gets more reps and Ja lines up with him, good night. Yeah, like I said, you ultimately look into that potential, right? It just oozes potential on what you're able to do defensively, if you will. Um, but I kind of want to transfer. We talked about the transfer portal for edges, but there was some significant names that hit the portal, and I think Georgia just might be after a couple of them. I think we'll go ahead and start with this. Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter entered the portal last night, Sunday night, if you will, if you're listening. Sunday night enters the portal. The presumption is he's automatically just going to Colorado. But there's reports that he's not necessarily locked in to go to Colorado. And if that is indeed to be true, I definitely think Georgia, it would be ridiculous not to. It's just that simple. It would be ridiculous not to spin the wheels back on Travis Hunter and try to get him to come to Athens. You could play him at a receiver. You can play him at DB. It doesn't matter. We saw what he was able to do at Jackson State. In my opinion, I would probably say play him at receiver and see if he can be your X receiver. Just my thought. But ultimately, we'll see how far things progress with him. As Bishop says, it's all about the money, and that may be true. But I definitely think Georgia's going to, push their chips in and see where they stand and see what happens. Like I said, you'd kind of be dumb not to at this point. But another guy entered the portal from A&M that we're all familiar with, and really two of them. When you look at Smoke Bowie and Marquise Gross Killebrew. Now, I think Smoke Bowie will be in this class, will be in Athens in January. I just feel that way. I don't know. I don't know as much about the situation with Marquise Gross Killebrew, but I would say that I think you see Smoke Bowie as a Georgia Bulldog here come January probably. I just get that feeling. He was a commit. Nick Williams was was big in his recruitment there. Obviously, Nick Williams leaves to go to A&M. You kind of see Marquise and Smoke Bowie go with him. Now Nick is at Colorado. And I think you could see a reunion with Georgia here. And if that's the case, I think you're looking at, helping out the safety room. And I mean, like I said, I would love to see that kind of addition, knowing that we're losing what we're losing, right? Especially with Chris Smith, you need those intangibles and help with those bodies. Obviously, you'll have Malachi Starks, and from that point, we'll see what happens. Rudes wants to be Juan Zex and half his money as well. God, man, sign the prenup, Jesus. As Bishop mentioned too, as well, both of those were original Georgia commits. Just further reiterating what I was saying earlier. But I think when you look at that right there, right, Georgia's going to need some help at receiver, right? We've seen and if you over the weekend, Ra Thomas and Dominic Lovett, right? Dominic Lovett those are two names at receiver that you absolutely need to keep your ears on. There's no how can I explain this? There is no hiding the fact that Georgia needs receiver help, and they're going to go through the portal to do so. I think it's needed, and honestly, I think you're trying to find that true X receiver, right? Outside of A.D. Mitchell, Georgia doesn't have that. Has it hindered them offensively? Slightly, but it's not the end-all, be-all. But if you're able to bring in a body like Ra Thomas, and then maybe you're able to bring in Dominic Lovett as well, right? You bring in Lovett from Missouri as well. I think the potential there would be, through the roof. Bishop Don says won't happen. Are we referring to both, or are we referring to one specifically? Please elaborate further there. I think Robert Thomas could easily come into this class, and I think that's the one that I would really want more as well. That's that true X-type receiver, in my opinion. If you don't get Travis Hunter, which I don't think Bishop Don thinks we will. So I ultimately think you're going to have to get at least one, maybe two receivers through the portal to help out there because you're about to lose some key players too. Rude says last time we needed a whole wide receiver class, we got Rosemary Burton and that whole group. A lot of talent. Yes. Bishop's referring to any receiver that's a blockbuster. Well, I mean, I think Robert Thomas isn't necessarily a blockbuster in quotations. Um, Love it, I think might be. I see your point there. And I think that's what you might be referring to is Georgia's not going to go into a bidding war for anyone when it comes to NIL. So, and also he mentions too much rotation, and certain people are okay with that. I think you look at what we've got in this class, and I think they're understanding of that. We'll see how only time will tell with that. But when you get certain players, they want to be the guy, they want to be featured, and I think that's what Bishop's referring to there. But if I had my way right now, I think you look at Robert Thomas as being in this class. I think Georgia's in a really good spot to land him. Um, but don't to kind of what Rudes was saying right there. Understand that you've got some playmakers, right? You've got some playmakers coming in the 23 cycle, right? I think my feeling is Tyler Williams has the potential to be your X receiver. He's definitely got the measurables and the body to do that. Now, obviously, we just need to develop him and see what he's about and see if he can be that X receiver that you're wanting. Root says, don't come to UGA thinking you're going to be the only one getting fed 20 touches or all the catches reps. Yeah, if you're going to think that, man, try to go to Bama. Like, I'm not. I mean, I'm not. It's just the way it is. If you want to be the guy and you think like that, go for it. Go to Bama by all means and push your luck. That's just where I'm gonna leave it there. They've shown that they stick to one or two guys, and that's it, in my opinion. And when they try to rotate through guys, it's just not looking good. And they've got a lot of playing time to be there in that receiving core because they've lost a lot. They have lost a lot, but and I think that's a testament to what Kirby has set up offensively and as a program. It's going to be a rotation, and it's been proven, right? We can actually say that it's proven that what we've done, regardless of the receivers, the stats, and everything, it works. It gets you a national championship. It can get you that. Rude says, with rotation, they come out more versatile with less wear to be the best for the NFL. Hell, 1 year starting, 2 rotating. Yeah, like I said, ultimately we saw what happened. How we won a national title, and when what Rude's point is, we look at AD Mitchell. AD Mitchell was getting reps, right? Lad McConkey was getting reps. Kearis Jackson, when he was healthy, was doing these things. So when it came time in the biggest moments, AD Mitchell makes it one of the best catches in a national title game. We'll see. So but at the same time, it's also something that Kirby wants you to block, right? Marcus Jack Saint, we've seen him make some key plays this season, but I don't know how many blocks this guy has made, key blocks too. Yeah, and that's important too. Kirby wants you to block, but he also will feed you the ball as well. It's not your old Georgia, right? It's not your old Georgia where you're just going out there to block it, and you can't use that anymore, in my opinion. Though people will still find a way to do that. Um, However, Bishop Don says, however, for NFL, you can hope for second round tops. Yeah, you look at George Pickens, right? Listen, I thought George Pickens was going to be first round pick. He goes to the Steelers in the second, and at this point, outside of Georgia fans, we already knew this, but people are already at the point where now he starts making amazing catches, and they're not even amazed by it anymore because he does it so much. He did it yesterday. He did it Sunday against the Panthers. Just toe tap, kind of like tightrope walking down the sideline for a couple extra yards after the catch. And I think that's the key there, right? Like George Pickens can show you that, but you've got to recruit those guys. And that's where Pat says our rotation being a double-edged sword in that regard. It's great for this, but not so much for that. It's a mentality. Do you want to come in and try to win for a championship? Do you want to compete for a championship and win them? Do you want to do that, or do you care about your stats? Just saying. So Huge difference being money is what Bishop Don's saying. And listen, in today's society or today's world of college football, I think you have to take that into context as well. Significantly. Ruth saying, this is why we broke up one, and I'm your ex now. Can't agree on anything. Um, which Ruth saying, telling JOWG to get the gas. Hey, no violence. We're not inciting violence here, folks. We're not going to do that. Kind of want to transition over. Obviously, we've talked a little bit of the portal. We've talked, trying to do, obviously kind of previewed some things. But I do want to take a moment. Actually, no, I need to add one name in there, and I want to get the brigade on this. What are your thoughts on Dylan Raiola decommitting from Ohio State? Um, early on, the key I think is, um, ooh, okay, this is interesting. It's not Georgia related, but if you're a fan out of college football, 5-star quarterback Dante Moore has flipped from Oregon to UCLA, which kind of like if I'm looking at this right here, right, that these these pieces, excuse me, these pieces are telling because now you look at the transfer portal and things like that. It's just playing out. Um, DJ Uyalunglele, DJ Uyunglele. There you go. Since you like pronunciation, Juan. Um, there was a topic that maybe you see him go out at UCLA. Maybe you see him at Oregon now. Him and his brother Mateo could be maybe going to right. Maybe they go to Oregon. Speaking of Oregon, Bo Nix is back. So not everybody's leaving and everything like that. Um, I think that's interesting. Um, Pat asked a good question about that. Talking about Dante Moore flipping, he asked, "Was it because Bowen Four is coming back to the Ducks?" Honestly, I don't know, but I could see the logic there. When you look at a guy like Dante Moore, him going to UCLA, I think is key there, because of DTR, right? DTR, Dorian Thompson Robinson being gone now. That's a huge deal there. So when you look at the potential playing time there, I think that's a key factor. So Pat, you might be right. You might be right. Um, but yeah, so earlier, Juan says we are lacking a big name quarterback and will for a long time. Honestly, though, I mean maybe, but we got to be. We'll see. We'll see. Um, so, okay, so his son said that as a QB, it's a nightmare for timing. Can you explain more on what you're just saying there? Are you talking about the timing of? Are you talking about Bo's announcement? Is that what you're meaning? Maybe that's what it is talking about there. Um, but anyway, that's some interesting news because now you look at the transfer portal quarterbacks, all over the place. Yeah, hell, just over the weekend, Haynes King, former A&M quarterback, commits to Georgia Tech. So now we'll be seeing Haynes King, right, at the last game of the year. Um, so okay, so to explain the as a nightmare for timing, some guys are fast, some run great routes and get off the jam, some are just more savvy. So I think what he's saying is right, the rotation can be a problem because you have to have timing for all these guys. When we saw like Alabama, when you had when you had JMO and Mechie, the timing was there and it's so smooth. Now we see like last year we had some overthrows, we had some underthrows or whatever. And I think Bishop's talking about, referring to those, right? You're having to adjust to receivers all the time. And as a quarterback, that is kind of tricky. So, okay, now that you've explained that, I understand where you're coming from. But when it comes to this class for 2023 for Georgia, I do think that there is a possibility that you see some flips, but it might not be in a good way, right? I think there's extreme anxiety in where Bo Hughley will act. Will he stay with Georgia or will he flip to a program like Auburn? Not entirely sure. I think that's key, though. There's been some questions in the past with him, but I think you see him stay. But it's definitely one that I will keep. I think everybody should keep an eye on until ink hits the paper, and then even then you still might kind of want to be wary about it, if you will. Um, so that is something to keep in mind as well. Let's see. Also, I think there's an interesting name out of, or that's a current NC State commit, Kyron Jones, out of Charlotte Christian in North Carolina here in Charlotte area. Uh, there's a potential you can see him. He's listed as a 3-star running back. You might see him flip and come into this class. Now, I don't know if you're going to see him as a running back or maybe as a defensive back. Kid's got some elite speed, 10.6, 10.6 100-meter sprinter time. So yeah, I see the potential there, but I think it'll be interesting to see if he flips. How Kirby or how they will use him. I think with Roderick Robinson being in this class, ultimately I think you're trying to get two backs, right? That's why I think the question is there. Um, maybe is it something that Georgia goes through the portal? I don't know. Or do you take Kyron and just let him go and be a running back? I don't know, but I know he has some elite speed, and I'm sure you'll be able to use that. So, like I said, that's kind of a wild card if you're able to flip him because of the fact that he could play running back or he could play DB. It's literally um, oh my goodness, it's literally a same scenario as Lavassier Carroll almost. All right, we thought Lavassier Carroll would come in as a running back, and he obviously Georgia converts him to a defensive back. So obviously we don't necessarily know that there. But it's definitely worth noting. I just know that Wednesday is going to be extremely fun to see and play out. And make sure if you're watching or listening, you're following the DGD podcast on Twitter, things like that, because we're going to Wednesday. Obviously, we're going to do our show, but we're also going to give you up to date information on when guys sign. So whenever player does that, we're going to give you up-to-date information. So stick around for that. Stay tuned. That way you'll know who's early enrolling and whatnot. It'll help you distinguish that. Listen, you've got commitments coming Wednesday. Obviously, Damon Wilson being a big one there, so stay tuned to that. There's a lot to go on. This is a huge week for recruiting, especially obviously in the Georgia space. So stay tuned. Stay up to date. At the DGD podcast, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Follow us and get those notifications so you'll see when and where, or when and who, I should say, folks sign those NLIs. With that being said, we're going to wrap this thing up. Kind of did a little bit of a shorter show today, just being solo. Talked a ton about the recruiting. Listen, Wednesday's going to be wild, folks. It's going to be interesting, not just within Georgia, but all around the NCAA as the early signing day approaches. Just a couple days. We'll take one last question here. Are we expecting any Go Dog tweets from Kirby this week? So, Pat, yes, I think you can. I think you should expect it. I would expect it, yes. And I think you have to look at the potential of Damon Wilson, Jordan Hall being those guys. I think if they commit, you're obviously going to get that Go Dogs tweet. So I think you see that. I'm making a prediction that you do see those, at least one. We'll see, though. That's why I'm sticking around Wednesday. Ruse asked, show Wednesday? Yes, we are going to do the show Wednesday. So be prepared for the show Wednesday. With that being said, listen, hope y'all had a great day. There's a lot to stick around. Like I said, a lot of stuff coming Wednesday, so you want make sure you want to tune in Wednesday. And with that being said, have a great day and go Dogs.